Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and I am joined via Riverside by Joel Sked.
Hello.
And Ewan Taylor.
Hello, Craig. Hello, Joel.
How's it going, guys? Ewan, how is it?
I'm feeling a bit stressed because of this whole video situation, which will only be relevant if the videos actually worked. But yeah, now the podcast.
I'd also prefer if you turned your face towards the microphone more often as well.
I'm all 6 and 7s here because I'm not used to being shown. I had to tidy up the podcasting suite earlier, and everything's just basically off camera and a big heap that no one can see.
Which is pointless because all we can see is your big face.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't realise that. So yeah, that was a concern of mine. I felt like Lenny and The Simpsons, like, don't show them how I live type situation. This is like the sort of dumping ground room in the house, so I didn't want anyone else to see that. Any of our valued listeners.
And Joel, how are you finding this transition?
Fine. I mean, it's just it's the same setup as always, but you just hit record on the video as well.
Yeah, but obviously I don't care what you lot think you'll see in my house, but the listeners, I don't want them, or viewers, I don't want them seeing what my house is like, or at least in a negative sense. So that was my concern. Anyway,
there we go. So you and the self-conscious about our room in his house. There we go. We found something.
He lives in Linlithgow, by the way.
If anyone wants to have a look at it, you can actually see this room from the ground floor as well. So if anyone wants to see where the magic happens, then they can.
Okay, let's get on to talking about the weekend's game and less about one of Ewan's spare rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll begin with one of the games that took place on Sunday. Aberdeen defeating Ross County 4-0. I want to start with this just because I thought it was the most interesting of the results of the weekend, because I don't think anybody necessarily saw it coming. I know for a fact that I predicted Ross County were going to win this game when Gary Dunn asked us all for our predictions for the weekend's fixtures, because, well, it's just a theme this season that Scottish clubs, whether they be Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, even not in terms of results mainly, but even to a lesser degree with performances, Celtic and Rangers, haven't really performed after games in European football. So, and Aberdeen, obviously, second bottom of the table, only 2 points picked up, looked horrendous against Hearts. They did get a good performance out the side away to Frankfurt, but I still kind of thought they would come back down to earth with a bump for this one, especially against a county team that's looked pretty good so far this season, and yet they blew them away. Joel, you're somebody that's kept a close eye on Aberdeen over recent seasons. It's changing now that you're going at a job where you're only focusing on Hearts, really. But what did you make of this result, and for what little you saw? I know you watched the second half of Aberdeen's performance.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It was the type of performance that got Robson the job. The early kind of performances in his interim spell where they were just so full of energy, and that's the big thing that was probably struck me the most was how energetic and up and at them and just at it they were. Even in the first half and continued into the second half, you look for the team. Miovski was non-stop. Obviously, we'll come on to talk about individual players, but Miovski, Barron, Shinnie were all non-stop. Devlin, Gartman as well was stepping in, and then players coming off the bench were kind of buying into it as well, because Hayes came on early on, and the fact that they only made 3 changes from what would have been quite a taxing Thursday night, because they were chasing the ball if not chasing the ball, they were without possession for a long time, and then it's just that mental fatigue you have when you're set up like that. In Europe, essentially played a back 5, trying to keep it tight, organised, but then to come and on a Sunday, the expectation would be quite leggy, but they were just so full of energy, and it was just watching the game. They made the pitch, when they had the ball, they made the pitch look so big, like so wide, kind of so deep as well, that they just really stretched Ross County. And then when they lost the ball, they were so quickly back into the shape. Ross County couldn't really play through. The only times County got a wee bit of joy was, I think it was a set piece after kind of chance after a long ball. So it was kind of the perfect performance in terms of what they've served up in league so far, and a really good response to having gotten swept aside by a rubbish Hearts side last week.
I think the thing that impressed me a lot more about this Aberdeen side compared to the game against Hearts and what they've looked like so far this season. And it's funny, sometimes subtle changes can make all the difference to a team that's struggling. But I just thought they looked a lot better and a lot more balanced in the middle of the park for having basically inverted what Barry Robson had gone with before. So it was Leighton Clarkson in the quarterback role with kind of two grafters pushing high up the park, and Graham Shinney and Elber Ramadani last season. For this campaign, it wasn't working. Ramadani was a big miss. Shinney looked like he'd lost an extra bit of something after moving on a permanent deal in the summer. But for this one, it was Shinney and Connor Barron sitting more, with Jamie McGrath just as an out-and-out number 10 in front of them. And I think that worked really well. Barron was very good at getting second balls and battling with that County midfield, which County's midfield has been a decent strength of them so far this season, but it does look like a unit that lacks a bit of balance itself. They've got Connor Randall in there as a kind of, for the graft, the energy, the defensive side of it. But then they have Kyle Turner and Jan Danda, two players who are more flair players, and I felt that kind of hindered Ross County in this game. But Barron was excellent at battling them, getting the second balls, and also just when he had the ball as well, just keeping it simple. You don't have to go for the Hollywood pass. Just get the possession and feed it to the man in space. He was good at that. Shinney looked like Graham Shinney again. I wonder just of having that extra 10, 15 yards in which to get motoring is helpful to him in order to play his game rather than playing further forward and maybe trying to use that energy on more kind of knockdowns for the forwards or whatever to get him getting that head of steam going. Because I thought he was very impressive and it played obviously a huge part in the second goal. They made an absolute mess of that. Like, it really ended up they put it the ball in the back of the net, but it was a lot uglier than it needed to be. Put it that way.
Yes, it was. It was scrappy. Didn't look like they would score. You see the relief around everyone that Duke did score, having missed a chance earlier on. But I would urge anyone to watch, if they've not watched the goal or weren't paying too much attention to the build-up, watch Duke, because he kind of won one possession deep in his own half. Watch him just start sprinting, and like Jamie McGrath must have had a 5-10 yard hard head start on him, and by the time he got into the half past halfway line, Duke is just motoring and passing. He's like, I'm scoring this goal no matter what. I'm scoring this goal, and it was just proper. It was like he was running like he was in a movie where he's being chased by chased by a car or hunted down by a bus. Rather than just move off to the side, he's just powering his arms and just running in a straight line. And it was like the last thing he was going to do. I was going to get into that box.
How many movies have you seen where someone's been hunted down by a bus?
Someone's driving the bus. Someone's driving the bus.
That's not a trope, movie trope I'm aware of. I thought generally it just if you just look at the Aberdeen team, and this has probably been the case in the last few weeks as different players have come in and a sort of pieces start to fit together, but it actually looks like more players are playing in their actual position. At the start of the season, they're sort of playing wingers as wing backs. They're playing full backs as centre backs. It now looks like they've sort of got a back three of three centre halves. They've got, you can argue whether Nicky Devlin is that well suited to being a wing back, but he's more suited to playing in that position, I think, than he is at right centre half. McGarry's a sort of natural wing back, so it just that team just looks a bit more like, I presume, how Robson sort of saw it looking at the start of the season, rather than sort of the patchwork 11s they had to put out to begin with.
I think I had my reservation when Hearts were linked with Nicky Devlin. And my reservations. I don't think he's the greatest player, but I think the wing back role probably suits him the best, just because his biggest quality is his dynamism, his just ability to cover ground back and forth, and he was really, really good against Ross County, and he might not have the finesse in the final third, but causes a bit of destruction, he causes a bit of chaos. I think he is. If in this formation, right wing back is his position.
Yeah.
Joel, you talked about Duke there with his determination for scoring that second goal. I felt like he just looked a lot more determined in general.
Yeah,
it was. To be fair to him, the game against Hearts, he was trying things, just nothing was happening for him at all. But he did seem to be just digging in a bit more in this one. There was many times where he harried, he hassled defenders, he won the ball back in high areas, or if he didn't, then he at least stopped like attacks by knocking the ball out of play for a throw in or whatever. He did look a lot more kind of focused and channeled in this game than we've maybe seen him for most of this season.
Do you think it might be just down to the fact that he was left out against Frankfurt, and it was like, big reason I'm here this season, because there's a good chance he had opportunity to move on in the summer. The kind of big carrot was group stage European football, and then in their first group stage match against a Bundesliga side, he's on the bench coming off, and I don't know if it might have just been a wake up call, because you've got Miofsky, who's had an excellent season. I think he's improved from last season. Someone had got terrible judge of player, because someone had doubts about just because he could score goals, he can run in behind, but I thought there was other elements missing from his game. He's doing that. He's providing loads of energy. He's linking up play, and he's kind of taking on some of the slack that's been missed with Duke. And if you had both of them doing that, then fuck me, they're going to be a nightmare to play against the game.
Yeah, I wonder, because it's just one of those things where I don't know. I don't know if Duke did go in a huff. It looked for his performances like he did, but who knows? It might have just been somebody that's, he might not be the best trainer in pre-season. He might have just had a bad start. He might have been frustrated with Aberdeen's style of play, with the ball going to his head quite a lot of time. Who knows why he was playing poorly? But if it was a case that he kind of had an eye on elsewhere, players just ultimately have to realise at some point in the campaign, okay, you're still here. If you want to move elsewhere, being rubbish is not going to get you that. It's just going to put off clubs rather than go, oh no, we're brilliant. Let's say this guy's not scored all season. So now he's off the mark now, Duke. And before we move on, just a little chat about County. I mean, it's really tough the way they capitulated and ultimately lost 4 goals, and some of them were very poor. That could happen though. I wouldn't be too downbeat about it in general. It's hard when you get gubbed away from home, but I thought they started the game quite brightly. Aberdeen struggled with the aerial threat of Jordan White in terms of him knocking it down for opponents, and they got some decent chances off of that. James Brown had one to level right after County went 1-0 down, and then Ryan Leake hit the post as well at 1-0. And I suppose then the only thing really is just how bad they were once the game started to get away from them, and then they allowed it to get embarrassing, especially so quick into the second half, where Aberdeen scored 2 goals before 7 minutes had even passed, and then that's it. Game's over.
Malky Mackay was asked by the reporter, "No, this doesn't happen to you very often, does it?" And he was like, "No, you're right, it doesn't happen to us very often. Since the start of the 21-22 seasons, they've scored 4 or more goals. They've conceded 4 or more goals against Old Firm 7 times. Beat by Hearts 6-1 and beat by Motherwell 5-0 last season."
Happened a few times. That was when Motherwell were absolutely horrendous as well, wasn't it? And Van Veen scored a hat-trick. Because that was under Hamill, was it not? It was like their only win in months.
They were lucky not to be down to 10 men early on as well.
Oh, yes, that was a red card.
Aye, I was surprised I didn't get more of a VAR look.
Johnny Legg's leg was a different colour.
Yeah, that's I don't understand why that's not looked at again. It's one of those where you shouldn't judge things by a still image, but when it was Brown, wasn't it? It was
James Brown.
Yeah, he's like shaped himself into like a torpedo sort of shape. He's like both feet off the ground, mid-air. It's like you actually don't need to see the video. It's like that still image, that is enough to be a red card. And you connected as well. So yeah, I really don't understand how that's been missed.
Right, Ewan, we'll stick with you as we go to our next game. Dundee 2, Kilmarnock 2, because a lot of this hinged on a red card itself. A red card given against Josh Mulligan. Dundee were 1-0 up at the time. It was a straight red. The referee was called to look at the VAR screen. He went and looked at it, and in a rare instance, he stuck with his original decision. Ewan, I know that you were very much against this being a red card, so I'll give you the floor now before I come in with a counter-argument.
Yeah, now, given that I normally think everything's a red card, this is a rarity, but I just don't see what makes this a red card. Now, it's a bad tackle and it's unnecessary. So that I don't know if that was played in the referee's head. Something. If a ball's sort of loose and two players are lunge in, then it's almost a matter of timing. You can sort of understand sometimes the referee won't give it give it live. But this one, it was a bit of a swipe. It was an intentional foul, and it's absolutely definitely at least a yellow card. But I don't think there's any of the elements which would make it a red card actually exist in this case. Like, he's not studs up. He's not. I don't think it is excessive force. I mean, that's the only argument you can have to stand on.
That would be my argument. Is that I think it is excessive force. It's excessive force in endangering an opponent due to the nature of the tackle. So you said studs up. Studs up isn't. There's nothing in the rule book that says studs up.
That's not in the law. Yeah,
but it's excessive force in endangering an opponent because of the type of tackle it is. When you're kind of wrapping your foot across like that, you're kind of standard football tackle when you're just kind of trying to win the ball and you're late.
Mm-hmm.
That is typically not a type of challenge that is an endangering opponent, like a straight leg going head to head with somebody that can easily, snap somebody's leg in two.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those. And to be fair, let me get this straight before I go any further. I don't think it is a red card. I think it's a yellow. However, I do think it was excessive force, and I think he went in with no real intent to play the ball, and he went in really hard. And I think it's. Like I say, I don't think it should have been given as a red. I think it's a yellow, but I really don't think it's necessarily a quote-unquote bad decision.
Yeah, but I think having seen it again, as in the referee having seen it again, I think it's quite pure that he let it stand. And the only thing I would say is that there is the distinct possibility that the referee had a better angle of it than we can actually see in the with the replays, because. As I've said several times, like the camera angles aren't really good enough in Scottish football to have VAR. But anyway, we've got it. And from what you can see, it looks like basically just trips him up quite hard. That's what the tackle ultimately ends up being. It's not a red card, and I think it's quite pure for it's David Monroe, wasn't it, the referee, that he's seen that again, and unless he's seen something, as I say, that we couldn't see on the replays. I think it really should have been downgraded to yellow.
I assumed that on the first, not the first viewing, but the first replay viewing, that Mulligan had caught. It was Danny Armstrong, was it? Armstrong with his studs on top of his ankle, but then when you look at it, he doesn't. It's just like it's almost side of boot to ankle or ankle to ankle. Yeah, I think it was a strong challenge, a robust challenge, yellow card for me.
So what about the game itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, Dundee obviously did well to stay in it, but Kilmarnock really need to be putting teams like that away.
It's kind of a disappointing start. It's weird to say because they've beaten Celtic and they've beaten Rangers, and they're probably going to beat Hearts and be in the semi-finals of the League Cup. But I'm a bit underwhelmed by Killy's start to the season. I look at that team and I think it should be doing better than they currently are in the league table, and I think they've already thrown away points in games that they really shouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's straight. Apart from the League Cup, your group stage, is it not Rangers and Celtic the only teams that Kilmarnock have actually beaten? I think since then. So like so the drew with Dundee, drew with Hibs, could beat by Ross County, could beat by Motherwell, and drew with Hearts, but beat Rangers Celtic.
The best thing Hearts can do is get a man sent off in the very first minute.
Yeah,
because
I don't have a clue.
It's essentially like so. Kilmarnock, because of the red card, they had 62% of the ball, and I just don't. They're not a team built for that, and I thought they got a lot of joy in the first half hour before the red card, where the game was a wee bit more open. So when they won possession, they were able to get Kennedy and Armstrong to be direct and run with the ball, and then you had Watkins and Watkins kind of played Lashley, who'd make moves wide, and then you had Vassell, who missed a couple of good chances early on. You had Vassell as kind of that target man focal point, and they had a nice balance to them. Over the piece, they still created more than enough chances, or good enough chances to win the game. Dundee didn't offer too much of a threat until after going down a man down until the stoppage time, where they put balls in the box from throw-ins and set pieces, but it was just Kilmarnock lost their way for a chunk of the middle of the game. Again, I'm just, from what you see of Kilmarnock and what you think of Kilmarnock, they're a team that, like a few teams in Scotland's Premiership, are built to be without the ball for longer spells than with it.
I think they're also lacking a kind of finisher up front, because Kyle Vassell's not somebody who at any point in his career has ever been much of a goal scorer. Marley Watkins has had very small... Well, yeah, a period at Inverness where he scored regularly, but other than that, he's not been a goal scorer in his career either. And I think that was telling with the fact that they had 21 shots in this game and only hit the target 3 times. And that's, you don't need to tell you that's really poor. I think they're also missing Corey and Daba as well, because they've been flexible all season with the defence and kind of moving between a back 3 and a back 4 during a match, because they've got guys like Lewis Mayo and Robbie Dees who can fill in at full-back positions. So they've been able to do that fairly comfortably. However, I do think they're better when their kind of root formation is the 3, whereas in this game and in recent games it's been the 4, because he doesn't really trust... It looks like McInnes doesn't trust Tom Davies. And for what I've seen of him in the county game, I can understand why. He looks very... I'm not sure he's got the technique to thrive at this level of football. And Daba was somebody that looked fairly promising, and it meant they got that kind of solid back 3 with D's either on the left or in the centre of it. And with him out on the left, it's just not... It doesn't work as well, and I just don't know whether they're now lacking the balance in midfield, because you've got 2 wingers there in Kennedy and Armstrong, like certainly 2 proper attacking midfielders. And then you've also got Kyle McGuinness, who is a number 8 of sorts, but could also be a number 10 and is known more for his attacking output rather than being defensively solid. So then you're leaving in this game Brad Lyons to do a lot of the work in the centre of the park. And I just think they're, without that balance on the left-hand side, I think that they're maybe struggling a little due to that as well.
Yeah, felt like a bit sort of, like 2 distinct units of the defence and the attack, and there's not really that much in the middle, apart from Brad Lyons. And yeah, a back 4 of 4 centre halves. There's so many things that Derek McInnes does that remind me of sort of a low rent Walter Smith, and that is one of them. That he thinks that sort of as a back 4 that would work. I think it's rare, and especially in a game, your opponent against Dundee, or like Dundee rather. I don't really see that should be necessary. Not that certainly your Mayo and Dees and Finlay are all comfortable enough on the ball, but they just won't act like fullbacks.
Wasn't there someone recently? I'm just I was just trying to Google it. I'm sure there was his future. Yeah, it was. I knew there was someone said it was Brendan Rodgers, Derek McInnes' future Rangers manager, and he said this back in August.
Yes, he did say that. He was trying to psych him out for the League Cup game, and then actually just inspired Derek McInnes to victory. I would say that Derek McInnes has had his chance to be Rangers manager.
I like Derek McInnes, but being and gone, I think that chance.
Yes. I mean, that I'm sure we'll come on to that, and I think there might be an opportunity for someone coming quite soon to be Rangers manager, but I'll be very surprised and raging if it's Derek McInnes.
I've not really said anything about Dundee yet. I've kind of my main thing on this is Owen Beck. He's one of the signings of the season so far. An early front runner to be on our nominations list at the end of season awards for the Terrace. I would certainly say he's a loanee coming for Liverpool, a young player. He's quite small. He's very young looking, but he's certainly got a lot of fight in him, a lot of dog in him. He's also really good fun to watch. When he picks up the ball, he just wants to charge forward with it, and he's great at dribbling into the space around opponents. And he's got a good set police delivery as well. Played a significant part in both goals for this game. He's defensively, there's still maybe a little bit suspect there, but he doesn't look too bad. Like I said, he's certainly somebody that gets stuck in. It's just more his positioning and his concentration. But like I say, he's a teenager with very little, or I'm not even sure if he's got any. I don't need to check that, whether he's got any first team experience behind him before. But That's a small nitpick at this point in time because Dundee fans love him, and having looked out his clips from this game, then I could certainly see why. Yeah, his only previous first team action was 5 games for Bolton Wanderers.
Yeah, he's. I think he's been brilliant. I've been really impressed with Boateng as well. Obviously, seen him for Queen's Park last season. Was he? Yeah, he was Queen Park the whole season. I was getting confused with something else. He game was really good, and he does the job of in the midfield of kind of at times it's like 2 or 3 players just the way he's works out of possession, wins the ball back, and also look at him. He's quite a positive passer. He's quite positive with his play, and he'll try and play it forward rather than win the ball and just keep it going sideways. So like these 2 sensible signings, and obviously we've not seen the Mexicans unfortunately that
Sadly.
much. Yeah, but this Dundee side under Tony Docherty, they look okay. They're like such an un-Dundee side. There's no stupidness. There's no nonsense. It's just a team with a lot of energy, a lot of good young players, workmanlike at times. They're a team that are not going to score many goals. I don't think. I think Bakayoko's a good focal point. I think he did a really a good job against Kelly. I know Zach Rudden scored. He's not going to score a lot of goals. Robinson, I wouldn't trust him all that much in front of goal. But yeah, the defence looks solid enough. It's a shame. Usually expecting Dundee to come up and just...
This is not what you're here for.
No, I want to laugh when I watch Dundee. I'm not getting a laugh at the moment.
Probably the best Dundee side since the Paul Hartley top 6 one.
So far, anyway. It's very low bar to clear.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, they've just been like complete nonsense since then, obviously. But quite often, even with that team, they're full of nonsense. But they don't look to me. If they get relegated, I don't think it'll be by finishing bottom. I would say for Dundee, which is an improvement.
Right, let's get moving on to our next game, and the team that's probably going to finish bottom, St Johnstone. They lost 2-0 at Hibernian. And they just did not look like a good football team whatsoever. I watched the first 35 minutes this one. I just wanted to see how, because I know that Tony had said that St Johnstone looked threatening, and then after Hibs went in front, barely did anything for the rest of the game, which you can certainly understand because they've been awful. They were awful in the League Cup. They've been awful in the league, so the confidence is going to be rock bottom. So as soon as you go a goal down to a team they're fancy to lose to, you expect them to then go in and lose the game, which they did. They did have a threat. We'll get on to talking about Hibs very soon. I thought that threat came from the fact that Hibs' backline and defensive makeup of that team in general is still not good. And that will be a potential Achilles heel for them, at the very least until January, when Nick Montgomery, the new Hibs manager, can perhaps bring in some reinforcements to that side of the field, because it was something that was just kind of neglected by Lee Johnson and the recruitment team, I would say, this summer. But so they played a 4-1-4-1, and so it had Stevie May. Now, McLean has often been criticised for this, even going back to last season, for playing one central striker and not 2 together, because the strikers they have, unless Chris Kane's used to playing as a kind of focal point, one up front, bringing other players into play. Stevie May's always kind of looked at his best in this iteration of him at St Johnstone whenever he's had a partner. However, I thought May actually played well in this game, but he was doing it from doing the stuff that May does in terms of the amount of running he does across the width of the pitch and closing down and winning balls back in high areas and dropping it into pockets of space and playing through balls. But the 2 guys that were supporting him the most were Cameron McPherson and Dan Phillips. Over the course of a campaign, those guys
at one point.
They're not going to score many goals at all. And you saw that with Dan Phillips' chance. It was a good run, good pass from May, but when it comes to the finish, he's not going to stick that in the back of the net. Yeah. And so even at points where St Johnstone are looking a lot better and function a lot more as a football team than have done a lot of times this season, there's still massive flaws, and that it's not a good squad. It's not a good team.
No. Watching the moment where Phillips gets laid in at the box, it was kind of sat up. Oh, he's in the box. Wow, what a shot! It's like, I think it's the second worst shot someone has taken at that end of Easter Road after Pakijabi's free kick.
Oh, Yeah, that's Nottingham classic. But yeah, there's a bit like that. You know that meme, like what the hell's a polar bear doing in Arlington, Texas? That was very much Dan Phillips in the Hibs box. It's like he really did not look comfortable at all. But yeah, I mean, whether Sven Sprangler would have looked any more comfortable, probably not.
I
mean, it's
was
just
promised a face biter. I didn't see much evidence of face biting during this game.
No. Yeah, they just as like I think I've said a few times. Like I'm not convinced that St Johnson's recruitment has been terrible. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's been good.
I think it has. I'm actually meant to pull you up on this. You've said this a few times. You think the signings have made them be good. Who are these good players? Apart from the goalie.
Well, the goalie's good for a start. Most saves in Scotland.
Apart from the goalie.
Apart from the goalie, I have to admit they've disappointed me so far. But on paper, like they have like an all right record.
Know on paper.
Who are these good players on paper?
Look, Jeff has scored goals in his career, I think.
In one spell in his career.
Yeah, well, one spell. That's Matt Smith. He's a Welsh international. You know, McClelland's a Northern Irish international. He's terrible. I'll admit that.
I know for a fact that St Johnson fans don't rate Matt Smith either, and he wasn't even playing in this game. So,
well, give him a chance. Olafunwa came from Liverpool. He's also terrible. So I mean, with every passing week, it's looking less like that. That's that. What I'm saying is true. However, I will come back to the point that I think the problem was that they didn't have any good players at the club to begin with. And they've added a lot of these guys are quite young, and they've added a lot of them. And there's nothing, they're not there to sort of supplement a team. They're there to be the team, and because otherwise they've got to go back to what they already had, which is miles off being good enough.
The recruitment just looks like a team who have cut budgets big time, and that's what has So that's what is delivered. I don't think they're very good. I think they'll be. I don't think they're a terrible side, but I think they'll be competitive. They're not going to be an exciting side to watch. Don't think they'll score many goals. It seems like now St Johnstone have entered the point of not circling the drain, but when you get into that position when you're down the bottom year after year, this is going to be the third year probably going to be fighting relegation, and it's almost like a case of when, not if.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the guys in our Discord was saying that they'd sort of signed up to, as a St Johnstone fan, and they sort of signed up for like a comedy season of getting relegated, but it's not fun in any way, shape, or form if you just lose 2-0 every week. And
if you're going to get relegated in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, they're just like not as good as every team they play. That's St Johnstone's problem, and they're not even doing it in a fun way. So yeah, they are in a lot of bother. Even if the signings I think are good, come good, I think they'll still struggle, and they're not going to.
Nick Montgomery, in my opinion, sent a message to Ellie Johan that, like, the clearness of that message is essentially kind of you need to focus a bit more while you're playing, and we can get the best out of you that way. Because otherwise, it makes no sense to drop Ellie Johan and play Yar Tavares from the start.
It's like when when Jose Mourinho dropped Paul Pogba to play a young Scott McTominay, who obviously is common to be a good player, but it wasn't really then. It's pretty much like, well, if this guy's playing, then you've really got to fuck up your ideas. Yeah, I think.
I'm sure Johan would have just been like, I'm fine. I'll be back in the team soon enough.
Yeah. Yes. It did look like Tavares did too much, but I think he had one shot, didn't he? But
he did have that shot, but for the most part, in the first, like I say, I only watched the first 35 minutes, but for the most part, he picked up the ball and then tried to take on a man and gave it away. Or he picked up the ball, took on a man, started to get a bit of head of steam going, was then shoved off the ball, wanted a foul, didn't get one because it's not a foul. He's just built like the side of a fiver.
Yeah.
This is what we saw already. This is what we saw last season.
Yes. Yeah, and especially, I mean, I don't think he would suit that formation, and I'm not sure Ewan does either. This sort of 4-2-4 that Hibs, as you said, sort of have to play at the moment because of the.
Those are their best players. They're going to have to outscore teams this season. They're just going to have to outscore teams if they're going to finish third, because that defence is not good enough to carry a team there. However, they do have a lot of very good attacking options. Duncan, I got so we've joked about this already. Duncan said in a Patreon podcast, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, if you'd like to hear that, where he said that Hibs had the best forward line in the entire league. He then rode it back by saying, if you take out Kyogo from the Celtic team, they've got the best forward line in the league. Still a pretty wild thing to say, but I know where he's coming from because it's a very varied forward. Like if you include Boyle and Johan in it, they've got 5 players who are all a very good standard at this level, who can all do kind of different varying things and bring different stuff to the table. Venti looks a good signing. Adam Lafondra has been... I mean, nobody expected him to come in and be this good. He's been excellent. Doidge is reborn and shown us Christian Doidge things of the past. And obviously we know what we're getting with Boyle and Johan's the most unpredictable player there is in Scottish football at this moment in time.
The thing with the front 5 is good and it's very good, and it's the fact that they are all contributing. They're contributing even before the managerial change. Like Lafondra, I'm surprised he's been quite such a central figure in terms of starting, but he I expected him to be contributing. I thought he would be a positive signing because he is someone who actually has a very good pedigree. I know he's older, but he's forged out a very good career for himself in England and did really well in the A-League, which, depending how much attention you pay to the A-League, but there is, with those 5 and the variety of qualities that they bring to the pitch, is that Hibs know that if they're struggling in a game, they can make 2 changes and they can play in a completely different manner, or they can, if they're not getting success via one manner, they'll bring on someone else and they'll get success down a different because you got pace. Teams have to drop back, and then if teams have to drop back, you got Doidge, and you go forward to Doidge and hit him, and then if you're hitting him, he's going to be basically on the edge of the box, and then you've got possession, you've got territory against teams. Yeah, it's a work in progress, but very early work in progress. But annoyed that they seem to have made a very sensible managerial decision, I think, and already he can see his workings, what he wants in a team, the structure of a team. It's he's got his message across very well, and that's a big thing. I do think he is a much easier manager for players to listen to understand, to like. I think he is maybe more personable. He's a better man manager. Just like stories from Johnson. I think he could rub players up the wrong way. I don't think Montgomery's got that. I think he's going to be a demanding manager, which I think players want but they will know where they stand at all time.
Yeah. I mean, the formation. Obviously, I think it is quite obviously you would think that Hibs might struggle when they don't have the ball, because Ewan can you track back? Can Boyle really now? Given later stage sort of Martin Boyle career, I don't think he really wants to be his own half that much. So that is an issue. But it's probably also in terms of build up. They just won't have that many players comfortable on the ball in their own half. I don't think any of the players that they've got really want to be doing that. So yeah, and I think there was a spell in this game where St Johnstone sort of stopped Hibs getting out a wee bit. Which if St Johnstone can do that, obviously St Johnstone can't sustain it. But if St Johnstone can do it even for a spell in a game, then other teams might cotton on. So it has the feel of a formation that will work for a few weeks, and it might well work longer than that if Hibs depending on who Hibs end up playing, because it's not like the league's full of quality. But I think it will get rumbled relatively quickly.
I did wonder about this Hibs team once the weather kind of turns a bit more and the pitches get bogged down and it's just a bit difficult to play expansive attacking football. But that's why Doidge is really key to the squad as well, because it just means that they can go long. Now, Montgomery so far has shown that he really wants kind of building up from the back. However, if he's got flexibility in his managerial game, then that wouldn't be a problem. And you could just go long to Doidge and get guys feeding off of him. I mean, Boyle and Johan's pacing behind is just frightening, and Lafondra dropping off into his pockets, and Venti, just that predatory goal scorer. So it can easily work once that happens. In games when the attack's not functioning, bring Doidge on and just go route one. Whether that'll happen or not, we just need to kind of wait and see. The one player I want to talk about just briefly before we move on to the next game is Lewis Miller. I think he's in running for one of the most... in the running for one of the most improved... He's in the running for the most improved player, I would say, in the top flight so far this campaign.
Within this season, I would say, because he's had some shockers at the start of the season.
Yeah, he's still very raw, I think it's fair to say. But he's certainly showing what I saw when I kind of scouted him on Y-Scout prior to signing for Hibs. I looked at somebody that was continually charging up and down the flank and just using his power and his athleticism to make a difference at that end of the park. And then I saw him play against Falkirk, and I think maybe against, I can't remember, I think he played against Morton as well in the League Cup group stages last season. And I was like, who is this guy? Because he's not doing any of this. He's just staying back as a kind of boring right back, and it was quite clear that he didn't have the technical ability or the defensive ability to really function if that was what he was going to do. It must have been a confidence thing. He seems like a very confident guy when you hear him speak off the park, but, you know, moving to another side of the world is a different league, a different standard. There's always going to be doubts, and it's taken him a while. However, they're now getting something approaching the best out of him, and Nick Montgomery is somebody that should be familiar with him as well. And also, I think the style suits him, where they've got the inverted wingers. So it was Tavares on the right, and then it was Johan on the right when he came on. Typically it'd be the other way around, with Boyle on the right and Johan on the left. So if the winger's going to move inside, that's going to create more space for Miller to just keep bombing up that flank, and I think that's going to mean that this improvement in his game, especially from an attacking standpoint, is certainly sustainable. Right, let's move on to St Mirren 1, Hearts 0. Joel, I don't have any notes of this. I've not watched any of this game back.
You don't need to, Craig. You've seen the story a million times.
Exactly.
You don't need to say anything.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So tell us about the story again. Or do you want to talk about St Mirren first?
Yeah, let's talk about St Mirren first.
It's a kind of similar story with them that we've already said so far this season about how much improved they are, how much Oyesanya is just a player completely transformed. He still has very little composure in front of goal, but he's an absolute nightmare for opposing teams. McMenamin looks a great signing. Kilty's performances have shot up. The midfield, regardless of who's starting the midfield and defence, they just play well. St Mirren, right now, I think they're my pick for third place at this moment in time. I don't think that's a wild shout whatsoever.
Nah, I think that is. I think there's once a couple of teams settle in, kind of looking at potentially Aberdeen, Hibs. They've got more quality.
Joel, I don't get this. I get it to an extent, but I disagree with this assumption that everybody has that it's just going to be Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen. We've seen it so many times in Scottish football throughout the years that Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen do not finish third, even when they're all in the league in the same season. We've had it Motherwell doing it before, Livingston doing it before, St Johnstone doing it. I think Inverness Cali done it one year, although Aberdeen did finish second, but let's gloss over that. But it's very rare that you get dominance by the teams that should be dominating positions 3 to 5. And I think this could easily be a campaign where none of those clubs do it, and it's somebody else. And if it is somebody else, I think by far the most likely contenders are St Mirren.
Yeah, I agree with that. If all three, if Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen don't get their act together, then St Mirren are definitely best placed. They are just St Mirren against Hearts. They knew exactly what they needed to do. Robinson spoke about it afterwards, and he said they didn't get their press right against Motherwell, and they kind of reset against Hearts, and they were I thought they were a wee bit more aggressive. I thought they pressed a wee bit higher. It was case let the two centre backs let two Hearts centre backs have the ball, and then when it got into midfield, I thought they anticipated it more. That as soon as a Hearts player received the ball when he was facing his own goal, they went and they looked to put pressure on. Fortunately for Hearts, it was Benny Beningame back in the team at the sitting the holding role, and he was often getting the ball into his feet, and he is a good enough player to evade pressure. to keep the ball and turn it out, which he did on a number of occasions. But there were always risky moments in that because St Mirren were so alert to it. And then the other aspect of the game was if they get the ball in the defensive third, turn the Hearts defence, get the ball in behind, let Olisanya chase it. My God, he really, really unnerved Kai Rose. Really, really unnerved him. Even just like with Kai Rose running just a wee bit of pressure on him, he looked a bit skittish, very skittish, and that kind of fed into Kent, and it was just so easy for St Mirren to hit the ball long into a channel in behind, and suddenly it was Olisanya against the two centre backs, but Olisanya was often getting there first, putting his body in. I think he only looked at stats. Olisanya only made 9 passes, and he was on for like an hour. But it was just his presence and his direct running that made a massive difference. Afterwards, Robinson said he was honest, saying that was that they had a harsh conversation. Olisanya went to Arbroath on loan, and what did Robinson say I've got here? It was a harsh conversation. He didn't perform to the levels that we knew he could do at Arbroath, and he didn't work hard enough. It was as simple as that. I sat him down and told him what he needed to do, and full credit to the boy, he has listened. So yeah, he's the perfect striker for St Mirren in terms of replacing Curtis Main. Probably won't score as many goals as Curtis Main, but what has changed with St Mirren this season is that they have a wee bit more flexibility in attack. I think with McMenamin coming in, so they can drop between a 3-4-3 with McMenamin and Kilty, or a 3-5-2 if you bring in Mandron or Alex Grieve, who both scored goals in the second half. Mandron was very very harshly pulled up for a panic push on Frankie Kent, and it wasn't. That was a surprise because he let it go and he scored, and then it went to the VAR check. It seemed to be very, very generous, almost like they had sympathy for Hearts because they knew Hearts were never going to score.
Yeah, I think Nick Walsh did give it, but he let it run, and then
he let
Nick
it
Walsh's decision.
As soon as the ball went in.
Yeah,
I suppose in that instance, it's then one of those cases. Is it enough to overturn it?
Yeah. I thought there was even obviously the Dessers incident in the Old Firm was talked about again and again and again, but I thought there was much less in Mandron's tackle than there was in Dessers. I'm not sure he makes any contact really whatsoever. Obviously, there's a slight I think there's a slight push, but I mean nowhere near enough to make Kent just realised he'd sort of fucked it and fell over. I thought.
Joel, the problems with Hearts.
Craig, there's a litany of issues that extend into managerial decision, recruitment, and a number of on-field issues.
Do you want to list some of them?
So I mean, you go back to the start, and I expressed my opinion on the terrace chat, and that I wasn't sure about the full-time appointment in Naismith, just because there's a lot been said like, the Hearts were wrong to sack Robbie Neilson. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think it was the lack of a more experienced appointment. I think the Naismith came in, and that interim spell did well. I thought some of the praise was OTT. I think there was signs that of improvement. There was aspects which were improved on, but I didn't think it was enough to go right. He was certainly going to get the job, and then if he got the job in normal circumstances, I'd be like, right, that's fine. They have a lot of trust in him. I think he is highly rated. I really like him. I like a lot of what he says. Like listening to him. Some of the things I disagree with. Some of the things he said after the St Mirren game, I would disagree with. But the way it was packaged, I think that really put pressure on him, and it had to be a really good start for Hearts with the way that the managerial team was packaged, and we know why it was because of the UEFA. And I think a lot of people knew Naismith was still the manager. No, even if Frankie McAvoy also said that he would have the last decision, and then you have Naismith saying 30 seconds later on Sky, it's nothing's changed from last season. It's just a really bad look. It's just a really bad look, and when things don't go well, that scrutiny increases more because of that. And again, I don't think Naismith, I think Hearts needed a experienced manager to go into this European campaign to get the best out of a younger squad that they want to develop and move on for cash. But they, but then putting them into that situation, like knowing that you're hiring an inexperienced manager, but then packaging it in this way as a kind of technocrat, it's just a mess, and it put them behind the eight ball, so to speak. And then you go into recruitment over the last few years. I think there's a lot of the kind of right positions. You can understand the right profile of player, younger, with potential. I think there's been maybe too much of that, too much of younger potential. There's a lot of players we've paid fees for, but there's been very few real success stories. And then you move into the actual on-field issues, and I think we've regressed since that interim spell with Nielsen. I think that there's, interim spell with Naismith. Naismith wants a style of play that's not been translated onto the pitch. There's obviously an issue between what's happening, so like how they line up in training, and I believe that the players really enjoy working under Naismith, but it's just not happening on the pitch. And Hearts are just the most predictable, easy side to play against, and it's a Hearts side that I don't recognise as a Hearts side. Like the qualities I look for in a Hearts side is aggression, confrontation, like really confrontational, tribal almost, like big physical Hearts, and that should be a good thing. That should be a good thing. But the Hearts don't have that at the moment. They can't deal.
Hearts are certainly not big and physical. They're soft as shite.
It's like the team. Scottish football 101, they're not good at the basics in Scottish football. Winning battles, dealing with like long balls, etc. And yeah, it's just been it's the same story from game to game of a team sitting off and allowing Hearts to have the ball, and then as soon as they get the ball, it's just turn them and create chances. And yesterday's like 6 of the last. How many league games played? 5 of the 6 games we've had over 64% of possession, 70% against St Mirren, and it's not great. And then on Saturday, played after having one of his best games of the season. Cammy Devlin in centre midfield was essentially playing as a right on the right kind of midfield.
I was going to ask about that. If that was actually where he was, I was going to ask if that's where Devlin actually played, because it was hard to tell. I've only seen the highlights, and it was hard to tell from those, but that's where he's sort of been stationed in all the sort of team lineups I saw. I was like,
yeah,
really?
Naismith said he was asked about it, and Naismith said he didn't. He wasn't playing. Wasn't playing out wide. It was like he was more playing from the right. He was coming central, and he was talking about how he wanted to have 3 centre midfielders in there for Hearts to be more secure when they lost the ball, but they weren't more secure because St Mirren often just bypassed the midfield and put pressure on the centre back. So yeah, it didn't work. And Naismith talked about creating chances. So Hearts created 3 chances in the second half. Rose had the header off the line. Devlin had a shot tipped round the post, and Shankland right to the death. But at the same time, they gave up kind of a lot of chances as well. Got lucky, like we said, with man drawn. So it wasn't the worst Hearts performance this season, but it was. It certainly wasn't anywhere near what's expected.
It could have been a sacking performance, because it could have been a hiding. It could easily have been. And that obviously requires everything to go in St Mirren's way. But if the Mirren goal stands, if Grieve, I mean, that looked very, very tight. I think you've got to assume it was offside, but there's very little in that. And they had the goal for the high boot disallowed in the first half as well, which possibly, I mean, probably again, I think that's the right decision. But I thought St Mirren looked dangerous from set pieces in general. So. That could have been.
I'm going to cut you off there. It's a shame that it wasn't a hiding and it wasn't a sackable offence, because we're now going to have to deal with more crap
Exactly.
games under this management. So let's just move on, though. Livingston 0, Celtic 3. Celtic go a goal up, get a man sent off. You're thinking, oh, this might be a game now. Nah, it just ended up quite comfortable in the end for the reigning champions. And Ewan, it's quite obvious why nobody wanted to spend £1 million on Joel Newbley. Can't shoot.
Yes, he cannot shoot at all. He you can see why he just they'll come up in every single scouting report that this guy can do pretty much everything apart from score goals. So do you want to play him up front in your team? Not really. You certainly don't want to spend the £1 million that presumably would have maybe staved off the ownership change, which Livingston have announced today. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I thought Livingston were really, really quite poor. You could even go in the fact that Jamal George probably should save the penalty. I mean, it's a rare case that you'd blame a goalkeeper for conceding from a penalty, but it was right at him, and he managed to let it squirm underneath him. The Joe Hart sending off, that was as good as it got, obviously, for neutrals and not so neutrals watching it. Very funny, just very funny. And I think Joe Hart's probably the most disappointed that Celtic actually came back and won quite comfortably, because I mean, the man has a humiliation fetish, and we're not here to kink shame, but Joe Hart has a humiliation fetish. He loves fronting up, and I think he's sort of managed to get himself clean in the last couple of years. He's not made that many mistakes. He's tried a couple of times to pass it straight to opposition players, but not really been punished. But he got a wee taste for it in midweek with conceding that free kick. And even though it's like Furuhashi made the mess of it in the wall, but Joe Hart was like front and centre. It was all my fault. Don't worry about it. It was on me. This result's on me. And then it's like, like a shark getting a taste for blood or something. He's gone for it again. He's seen an opportunity again to front up. And I think it was Alistair Johnson after the game was saying, Joe Hart kept apologising after the game, and we were just like, shut up, Joe. It's like, yep, that's because he was desperate. He wanted to do another interview. He was like, this is on me and it's my fault, and I'm really sorry, and we'll work hard to not make that kind of mistake again. So you'll be annoyed. But yeah, I do think Scott Bain did his best, obviously, with that chance that Nibali just dinked gently over the bar. That maybe he's not going to do enough to save the team. But I have had a suspicion before the season started that Bain would end up playing over Hart, just because I think Rodgers would trust him more with the ball at his feet. Now that wasn't a good start for Bain, obviously, with that mistake, but I just wouldn't be that surprised if Joe Hart doesn't get back in the team. I think I'm surprised Celtic haven't signed a new goalkeeper already. I presume one is in the post, but yeah, I wouldn't be that, especially if the league becomes quite comfortable, which it looks like it might very soon. I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers makes that change, as he did when he had Gordon and Doris de Vries, and he dropped Craig Gordon for a bit. I think he might do the same, at least until a new goalkeeper comes in.
Joel, Dyson Maeda. He was perfect for this game because Celtic went down to 10 men and he was basically able to play two positions at once. He was like left wing and up front, as Rodgers did, which is the thing that I like that managers do these days. And I actually
keep two men up.
Yeah, I actually have my suspicions about those who don't, when they just keep one man up front. The only thing I think it's worthwhile for that is if you're particularly susceptible down the flanks or you've got centre-halves who can't head the ball. But if you don't have that, keep two men up front so you can at least be competitive in the game and ask your opponent to beat you by going down the wings. But Maeda was perfect for this. But there was a moment in this game where it ended up working out all right because Matt O'Reilly was there to bury the loose ball. But Maeda, very strange attempt at finishing a chance, completely fluffs it. Riley's there to score, so it's fine. But then later in the game, tops off the score and scores the third goal with an absolute belter at the top corner. He's a conundrum, isn't he?
I don't think he's a conundrum. I think you know exactly what you're getting from Maeda in that. He'll do loads of running, loads of graft. He's a player that I imagine teammates absolutely love having in their team. other than maybe when they're looking for that clinical pass from him, or him to finish. And I think he's a player who he's always going to score goals and be a menace. Probably not score as many goals as you perhaps hope, but I just think. Yeah, he's always going to be a rash finisher. He's going to snatch at chances. The goal itself, good finish. There's an angle where I'm thinking that's not far from Jamal George if you dive up there, because it was quite central.
Yeah, he had a couple of dodgy moments, George, I think, in the game as a whole. But yeah, he's a very inconsistent finisher, either. But yeah, I think him and Farashi, to be fair as well, are both the ideal strikers in that scenario, that sort of 4-3-2 formation that you basically teams should play when they go down to 10 men with the sort of split strikers. They're both comfortable wide and through the middle. The Celtic were very impressive throughout, to be honest. Apart from they always looked slightly susceptible to that ball over the top, and it was Singari that was running onto it every time, and obviously it did lead to the sending off. But I get the impression that Livingston could have kept on doing that all day, and they wouldn't have actually scored. So yeah, good performance from Celtic, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's nothing really else to add. We've not really spent much time on this game, but don't think there's too much else to say. Matt O'Reilly's looked really good this season. He's actually like he's maybe taking his performances up a notch, but that's
defensively
to be
and
expected anyway. He's only 22, so
I think he's probably player of the season so far. I would make him favourite to win it.
Okay, let's move on to our final game. Rangers 1, Motherwell 0. Dessers with the only goal halfway through the first half, and I didn't see the first half, Ewan. However, I saw the second half. Holy Christ. Rangers are bad.
Terrible. Booed off.
Deservedly so. Motherwell, I mean, injury time, the 5 minutes injury time, that was fairly nondescript.
Yeah.
Not much really happened. The 10 minutes leading up to that, from 80 minutes to 90 minutes, it was all Motherwell, and it just looked like it was inevitable that they were going to score. They didn't manage it, partly in fact because they don't have a Kevin Van Veen this season, somebody to take these opportunities that they do get. But it was just wild to watch Rangers look so susceptible in this game that they did, especially when leading 1-0. And I actually knew that going into the choice of games, because Aberdeen were 2-0 up on Ross County and Rangers were 1-0 up. And I was like, right, I can watch the second half of one of these two games. So I was like, no, I'll watch Rangers because they're going to be rubbish. And Motherwell will have a chance. And I was right.
You were right. I mean, I think if Al McGregor was still in goals, or John McLaughlin, or Robbie McCrory, then I think Rangers don't win that today. And that, not that Butland it wasn't that he made amazing saves, it was that he didn't make a massive mistake, which one of them would have, dealt with cross balls and stuff pretty well, which again was always a flaw. Some baffling decisions made by Micah Beale today. The starting 11 was odd, obviously. Scott Wright, who tried to exile him on several occasions throughout the summer, but he just kept on turning up again to training. So he didn't want to sign for Appendix 4. I mean, I wouldn't.
He seems to know the players' names.
He does. So he's like, all right. So you'll just keep picking you then, will we? So he came in from pretty much nowhere to start, which was odd, because it feels like we had to sort of play with two wingery wingers now, even though all the recruitment was based around not playing with wingers. But the most bizarre thing was obviously so Rangers are 1-0 up, and then Matondo. Well, I don't know why apparently this is quite a bad injury, but it was quite obvious that something had gone in Matondo's knee, and they let him play on for another 5 minutes, and then he had to go off. And to sub a winger after about half an hour for a centre half in a home game against Motherwell is one of the most bizarre substitutions I think I could ever remember seeing for Rangers manager. And
so it was John Suter came on.
John Suter came on, yeah. And now you can obviously, that's to go to a back three, but it wasn't a back three, it was a back five, because Barisic and Tavernier did not change their positioning one bit from how they would normally play. I mean, I would love to see actually an average possession map from first half and second half, but they were, as far as it certainly looked to me that they played exactly the same way they would have played if they had wingers in front of them. they also John Lundstrom was splitting the centre halves, but you can't split 3 centre halves. There's no space. Why? So he was just coming in. So it was like then it was becoming like a flat back 4 again, but with Lundstrom in the middle of it. It was none of the other players seemed to react to the fact that we changed the formation. They kept playing exactly the same way, which didn't work at all. Motherwell tweaked it, so they then had an overload in midfield, and there was basically had 3 centre halves marking Theo Bair of all people. So which is overkill. I think it's fair to say it was absolutely bizarre, and it's one of those where I don't think any of the players played well. And you definitely could take issue with a lot of the performances sort of individually as players, but I find it hard to really slate any of the players individually because what chance do you have playing in that? Nobody knew what they were meant to be doing, so which is pretty damning because this is not the first time that's happened this season, but I think it is probably the worst example of it. So yeah,
some manager trying to be too clever.
Yes, very, very much so. But he just, really looked like he'd confused the team. He has gone on about playing a back 3 a lot without having done it very often. At least he's dropped sort of Lundstrom into it a few times, but he's never really played 3 centre halves out and out like that in many games. But yeah, it didn't look like it had been worked on at all, which given how often it's been mentioned, you'd think it should have been.
As a Rangers or Celtic manager, you don't need to overthink things in when you're playing in Scottish football. Michael Beale overthinks it, and he seems like he wants to have real control. There's no element of
thing he wants. Yeah, it's very much its control.
There's no element of kind of chaos or like allowing players to express themselves a wee bit of freedom. It's just safe and it's dull. And some of the decisions this game just absolutely baffling. And it's another thing that the reason Rangers won't start winning trophies on a regular basis because your squad is just too nice. It's just indifferent. Like there's. I growing up, I just look at Rangers think it's like, well, he's a prick, but and they're always kind of nightmare to play against. But I'm saying this in a good way, it should be taken as a compliment. But no, I just there's something not quite right about Rangers, and I've got to break it to you, Ewan, unless you make a very good managerial appointment soon. You will no longer be you will no longer be leading the what do you call it? Leading the way on trophies in terms of Scottish Premiership.
No, we won't. Yeah, yes, that is a concern. I mean, I don't think
it depends how you look at it. It's either 55 or 1. So
got a way to go in some respects. But yes, no, it's not going to. A lot needs to change in Rangers, and it's not just Michael Beale. But that he does need to leave his post soon, please. Because I think he's got himself in a fankle. And it reminds me a wee bit of Cathro at Hearts. And I think Beale is a better manager than Cathro, I think, but he's just got himself a bit. He's got a bit confused, and I think he can't really see the wood from the trees at the moment. And to back up what was obviously the best result of the season so far, to beat Betis in midweek, to follow up with that nonsense today. I mean, it's another win, but it really was. I was more annoyed at that today than I was when we could beat Kilmarnock, because I think it was worse. So yeah, it's really, really. I mean, it just feels like you're one result away. And I was watching it, and I wasn't that I wouldn't have been that gutted if Motherwell had scored at the end, because I think it might have just brought on what needs to happen sooner. To be honest, a bit like the Heart situation. So, well, it's I really don't think Beale's long for the Rangers job, and it'll just be. I thought the Betis result might go quite badly, but it obviously didn't. But if any of the next couple of games don't go well, then I think that'll be him.
The only thing really to say on Motherwell is that just continue to be impressed by Stuart Kettlewell and how he organises and fashions his teams. It was just a kind of slight tweak to their system, certainly from the last time I saw them, where it was Slattery and Spittle were flanking Theo Bair. I'll mention him in a second, but with Lenny Miller and Harry Payton also in the midfield. But that worked well. They're all guys who could play with the ball. They're all very good at interchanging with each other, kind of these 1-2 touch kind of movements, especially around the penalty area, how the fans should chances. It's just really squeezing everything there is to get out of that squad. And like I said earlier, if they did have a proper forward, then they would really be in my mind for another potential quote-unquote interloper for the third place along with St Mirren. I just think that's going to hold them back. And Bayer, I mean, there was an opportunity they had where I can't remember who it was streaking down the left, but Bayer just had to play the pass, wait it into his path, and Motherwell were on for a very good opportunity there, and instead he smashed it well in front of him, and he couldn't even keep the ball in play.
Yeah, I think it was.
But
Spencer.
even when Bears at the side, it's going to get better with Conor Wilkinson, and it's going to get better. Well, to be fair, Mika Beerith is, I think, back a little bit sooner than we maybe initially thought after he suffered his injury against St Mirren. So he might, if he is the player that he showed that he might be in that game against Hibs, and that's a different story. But the other options, Wilkinson, Shaw, it's an improvement on Bayer, but it's not much of an improvement, and that's still going to be an issue for them, I think, for most of the campaign. And unless Breereth does live up to the billing.
Yeah, I think with Motherwell is that which is all to the credit of Kettlewell, is that they're much better than the sum of their parts, because the parts are pretty ropey. But they actually he's found a way to put those players together that actually looks really quite good. And individual, I mean, they really lack individual quality. They lack a bit of pace and power, I think, at times. In the forward areas anyway, they don't really have that one-on-one ability for anyone to sort of beat their opponent just with a bit of skill or whatever. But they do. For the success they have is through just actually playing really well and looking really well coached and playing as a team. So it's impressive. But yeah, you do wonder if if it did just that sort of lack of individual quality will sort of hold them back a wee bit.
Okay, that'll do us. Thank you very much for listening. Run a bit long on this episode, but we hope you enjoyed it regardless. We're shooting off now, so there's nothing really else to say. If you'd like to hear more from the Terrace podcast, in addition to all the other podcasts that we've done that are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all your typical podcast players, then you can head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace podcast, where there is an average of an additional 5 extra podcasts per week, and you can get all of them for only £5 a month. But if you only want a little bit more, say you only want 2 extra podcasts a week, well, we've got a £2 tier a month for that as well. And like I said, I think the last time, there's very little in life you can buy for £2 these days, let alone £2 a month. So there you go. A real bargain. Joel, actually, do you want to plug something as well that's only going to cost £2 a month quite soon? And even at this current time, I think only costs £1 a month.
But I'm in a real rush at the moment. But I am the editor of Hearts Standards, a new website dedicated to coverage of Heart from Lothian Football Club. And yes, what a time to do it! What could possibly go wrong? 3 away games in a row when we launched. But you can read all about it for, I think it's £1 for 6 months or £12 for 12 months. That's the opening offer. So yeah, if you want to read about how miserable Hearts are, or if you're a Hearts fan, check it out, at least for 6 months.
Right, Joel, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Ewan, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And I'm Craig Fowler saying Naismith out. Goodbye.